standing up in the golf swing is caused when golfers fire the hips too early in the downswing, and this usually starts from that transition phase, the first part in the downswing. You can see here from this camera angle how stuck I am in this position and trapped. Makes it very difficult for the strike to take place, the strike issues come into play, and also then the direction issues come into play because of this. And last week I had a couple of my students suffering with this issue, so in this video I'm going to be showing you what we did in those sessions which helped them create more room through impact and stop standing up in the downswing. And once you've took these tips and drills on board and they work in your own game, I'd recommend clicking the subscribe button as there's more content coming to you every Tuesday and Friday. And for those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Harry, PJ Golf Professional, here to help you transform your golf game. So what we noticed, just to begin with my student Jake, what he was doing is he was getting to the very top of his golf swing, and the first initial move was firing that hip towards the target in this transition. And what this caused in reaction to this was his trail knee, his trail hip, and his trail heel to move towards the golf ball. Now you can see from this camera angle here, obviously we get into this trap position with the arms, not a lot of room to hit the golf ball. We've got to get this flicking motion to take place to try and square up the face. It's no good. And this is why you're standing up in your golf swing as well. You can see here that reaction for me to actually go and stand up in my golf swing is caused from this hip firing towards the golf ball, this knee firing towards the golf ball, and that heel firing towards the golf ball. So these three sections are what we've got to change. As opposed to firing them towards the golf ball, we've got to get them firing round to create this room and keep this spine angle on this 45-degree angle that we look for. So just to begin with, I got Jake, my student, who was struggling with this, to hit a couple of chip shots, just taking a slightly narrower stance, not as narrow as a chip shot, but slightly narrower than a full swing, using the 6-iron. And all I said to him was, once you make your way to the backswing, just getting the club to reach parallel to ground from this position here, to keep your trail heel, your right heel as a right-handed player, down throughout that entire chip-in swing. So just to begin with, we hit a couple of shots just back and forth, like that one there. And if we were just to replay that video from this camera angle here, what you'll notice that on the downswing, with me keeping my right heel down, this actually causes my hip, my trail hip and my trail knee to rotate towards the left side of me, the lead side of me, and towards the target. And you can see from that video, it creates so much more room in that downswing move. So all we did was hit a few shots just doing that, and then we began to build this up in stages. After 5 to 10 shots, then I said, right, slightly wider stance, just a touch narrower than that full swing stance, and we're going to make a few pitching swings of the 6-iron now. We're going to swing up to where the lead arm reaches parallel to the ground, creating this L shape, swinging through, trying to keep the heel down. And obviously, as we got into those bigger swings, it became harder and harder to do, because what we would feel is this knee wanting to pop forward, and it will feel a little bit weird just to begin with, because you're not used to rotating this knee round and towards the left one, but this is what should happen. From this camera angle here again, watch this knee should rotate round towards the left one, and you can see that I'm keeping my heel on the ground. So then we just work this up into those pitch shots back and forth. And you can see there, I'm limited to how much I can actually rotate through. I can turn my hips round and through, which is good, but enough to be able to get that pure strike just like that one there. And that's what we noticed. We noticed from the videos that he was able to get more over the ball as opposed to standing upwards and pushing upwards from this heel and getting more compression and improving that ball strike straight away just from doing that move. Then we began hitting a couple of full swing shots, and the really tricky part for this first drill here. So hitting those full shots, imagine doing that at full pelt, full speed. It's going to feel really weird, and it's probably going to feel like you're really stretching out the body. The upper body and everything else wants to rotate through to target, but this heel staying down, very, very difficult. But we tested this with Jake. We tested him to see if he could really keep that heel down and turn on the way through into that full follow-through position. So we got to the top of the swing, really swung through, and just did our best to keep that heel down. And if it just begins to lift up at the end, that's absolutely fine, as long as that impact that heel staying down throughout the swing, then great. Now, just before you start thinking, I'm not saying keep the heel down through impact. There's plenty of players that begin to lift the heel up, you know, just like world number one with his crazy foot move, Scotty Scheffler lifts the heel up, but this is definitely a much easier, simpler way to be able to keep you lower during that downswing as opposed to standing up. So full swings, really trying to force that heel to stay down, back and forth. You can see there my right heel has just lifted up ever so slightly. Wasn't the best of strikes that time, unfortunately, but it still went on the green. But just replaying that video, you can see there how much lower I am as opposed to getting too stood up if I was to really force that heel upwards and getting that extension, that standing up taking place. Now, for Jake, when we began to practice that, what we were finding for him was that at full speed, he was still extending his upper body. Although his lower body was more active and rotating around as opposed to pushing towards the golf ball, we still found that as he was rotating round, his upper body would extend upwards and still lean upwards like this here, with the spine angle more vertical to the ground. So for this second drill, this was just to mainly focus on how we can keep the upper body lower as the lower body is able to rotate still. So just to do this, to begin with, I got Jake taking the club away, and I told him to place his left hand just above his belt buckle and his right hand, his trail hand out in front of us with the palm facing towards the target. We just swung to the very top of our swing in our posture and set up, turning up to the top, and then from this movement here, I got him to do two simple moves. I got him to push on his belt buckle here, to get his hips going further away from the golf ball. You can see I've not squatted down, I've not attempted to increase this knee flexion here. That's just happened just a little bit, just because I'm pushing on my belt buckle, just above the belt buckle to get those hips going backwards. But also at the same time, I'm allowing this trail arm to sink underneath my right pectoral, my right chest muscle here, bringing this arm out in front of the body, because what we noticed, even though he was turning through, keeping that heel down really nicely, he was still pushing upwards here and getting this trail arm stuck on the right hand side of his body, which is quite difficult because then we're having to get those flicky motions to take place again. So just up to the top, pushing on that belt buckle, at the same time we're sinking this arm underneath the pectoral here, the chest muscle. And that allowed him to create the room then to be able to rotate, keeping this heel down from there and keeping that 45-degree angle that we look for with the spine angle. The tricky part about this drill, however, is, as you can imagine, once we set up to the golf ball and we do that first initial move on the downswing, because you're so low, it's quite actually difficult to get that center strike when you do this in stages. So what I would recommend is taking a small tee and just working your way up in stages doing this. Start off with a little tee, just going up to the top, bumping the hip back, hands out in front of the chest, and then from there we're rotating through like so. That won't pick up because Trackman IO has to have the club next to the ball. So on this one, I'll just try and do it a little bit quicker in stages just to show you the outcome. But that definitely was more compressed, hands staying ahead of the club face, which is great for the irons. So it's up for one, hips back for two, and arms down, rotating through to three. And that, like that one then, which was quite interesting actually, and it's funny that I've just done that on that one. Didn't look the best of shots at all. We won't be happy with that on the course, of course. But I hit the ground first. I hit the ground for the reason, because it's very difficult in stages, like I mentioned, to bump those hips back, get those hands working underneath, and actually strike that golf ball properly. Once we start to work this interval in one motion, we won't be bumping those hips back anywhere near as much. So that feel versus real concept of, well, it feels to me like I'm bumping my hips, and this is what Jake said, it feels to Jake like he's really bumping those hips back, so his spine angle is nearly parallel with the ground. Whereas on video, he was actually able to get himself in this great 45-degree angle just because he was so used to swinging upwards like this with the upper body. So if you hit the ground practicing this in stages, that isn't the issue. It's making sure that when you do this in full swings, you feel that same motion and trust it. Because as soon as you extend upwards, it's not going to work. Now, because you're so used to extending upwards, what's going to happen in reaction to this? With you extending upwards with the upper body, what we found what Jake was doing was he was pushing his hands further out towards the golf ball. So when we tried doing this motion, all in one motion, we were hitting the ground a touch just because we were so used to pushing the hands to the ball. Whereas once we get it into this slot here with the arms, we want to hold this angle and just turn through. Just keeping that heel down. That's the feeling. So up to the top, hips back, arms in front, holding the angle and rotating through. Let's see if we can give that a whirl. Up to the top, hips back, into the slot, rotate and hold the angle. So bringing those two drills all in one motion. For Jake, I've left him working on getting up to the top of the swing, bumping the hips back into the slot, rotating and keeping the heel down. That's all we did in that session, nice and slow just to begin with, up to the top. And now that was a very good strike. I didn't even try and hit that full out, and it's carried the bunker, rolling beautifully towards the flag. Very nice and easy birdie putt on that one, that's for sure. I'm going to hit one full out now and see how far this actually goes and really trying to feel those motions. But just before I do that, I just want to give a quick shout out to GX Golf. They provide high quality golf clubs for a fraction of the price in comparison to the rest on the market. And using my discount code below, Harry10, you can get yourself 10% off on their great bundle packages of 3 gloves, 6 gloves or 9 gloves. So make sure you check them out. The link will be in the description below. So final shot here. I'm going to see if I can do this full out, just like we got Jake doing at the end. We got him using a little tee, so if you find it quite difficult, you can use a little tee as well. That was good. Little bit of a draw, just because I extended a little bit with my arms, but nice strike on the green again. And once you've had a couple of practice sessions doing this, you can then begin to allow that trail heel of yours just to lift up, because now we've got this whole trail side working more towards the target as opposed to popping out towards the golf ball. So if you do find these tips and drills useful for your own game, make sure you drop a comment down below of another tips or drills topic you'd like me to cover next, and be sure to hit the subscribe button. Lots more coming your way every Tuesday and Friday. Make sure you check out this video over here to talk you in more detail about how we can get this slot into the downswing. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.